FTII
That sometimes it's good not to wait and procrastinate, and not to wait like even for money. If you want to create something, just go for it. Just jump into it, and things will happen. Like it's it all comes from you actually. Like if you lead, things will also lead in the right direction.
Welcome to a new episode of Anything But Bollywood. We are talking to filmmaker, actor, screenwriter Pushpendra Singh. Pushpendra began his career as an actor, playing one of the leads in Amit Datta's Venice award-winning film Aadmi Ki Aurat Aur Anya Kahaniyan. His film Lajwanti premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival in 2014. His film Ashwathama played at Mami last year and has also travelled to the Busan International Film Festival. Welcome to the show, Pushpendra.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start by asking you, how did you get started on this whole process of filmmaking? You came to filmmaking as an actor.
Yes. Actually, the whole journey goes back to my childhood. We studied in a boarding school. Not a boarding school in that sense. In Mount Abu, there are hostels and then there are schools, private hostels. So I was in a private hostel called Devkunj Boys Hostel, and there on every Saturday they used to screen a film. And so after Saturday, every Sunday and the next week, we used to play films, like act and or enact the stories in our own way, our own interpretations, what we saw. So, and since then I had this dream that I want to go into films. And there were many kids from Bombay, and I used to around them and then say, okay, how does the industry look? What happens? And so I started writing also, like short bits, and I used to read out, and kids used to assemble, and then they say, he's written something. Okay, let's hear, and then I will read out. So yeah, it just stayed with me since then, and I wanted to be here. And then I've just pursued that ambition, yes.
And you started with an acting course with Barry John. Is that kind of where you started out, or you went to FTII first?
No, yes. I started with Barry John because initially, yes, I wanted to be an actor. I did some theatre in my school in Pilani, in the Billa school. And then, as usual, parents are not supportive of this medium. So I did my graduation, post-graduation, and then, I saved some money, and then, I did a course with Barry, and then I was part of his theatre group.
This is in Delhi?
In Delhi, yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is in Delhi, yeah.
And then you decided to go to FTII at that point?
Yes, FTII, yes. Then I decided to go to FTII.
Was that a struggle for you to kind of move away from whatever your parents said you should do and move towards acting? And how did you make that whole negotiate all of that?
Yeah, it's a story in itself, yes. I think I'm not alone in that struggle. I think except star sons, everyone has to follow that journey. Or if your parents are educated and they clearly know.
But this generation is not anymore. Now it's that was that previous generation.
Yeah.
The last 5-6 years has changed.
I think TV and suddenly news channels have also become like infotainment channels, and people have realized that maybe there's a career there, so they are supporting. But my parents, I come from a village background, and they stayed, they still stay. My whole family stays in a village in the Chambal, near Agra.
That's where you shot, the same area where you shot Ashwathama.
Yes. So, they always had a dream that I should go into the civil services. So, but I had another plans. So, I followed that.
And how did you negotiate that at that point with your family? Or did you just kind of put your foot down and were like, this is what
I proposed to them that I wanted to do this. but I realized my father is a very a simple, kind-hearted soul. He doesn't even understand the world. Actually, he's not worldly wise. He's traveled in India, but mostly some places in the north. Otherwise, he's not even aware about what's what. And but his reactions, as usual, that this industry is all about dancing and singing and fighting. There's nothing else. And so my brothers and some of my friends, the reaction was, I don't look like a hero. My personality doesn't look like a hero. So, and there was like, अगर तू हीरो बन सकता है तो फिर गांव में से कोई भी उठ के हीरो बन सकता है, मतलब ऐसा थोड़ी कोई हीरो बन जाता है, मतलब. So then I realized they were like not taking it seriously, and they were thinking that it's like a joke. But then I had decided that if I want to do this thing, and then I want to do this thing only. So then I was doing a job, and then I saved some money, and then of course like I fooled out with my father also that I'm preparing for civil services, and then he was giving me also some money. So that's how I survived. And then so I was lucky to actually join Barry John, because with Barry there were many other options at that time in Delhi. Now in Bombay it's altogether a different thing. That there was a theatre and education company also where you could enroll, and then you could teach drama in schools through that.
Oh, okay.
So you get paid, not much, but at least you could survive in Delhi. And then of course by then the acting course in FTII had restarted, so that was on my mind. And then I decided that I have to go there.
So after you, actually during FTII, I think this happened, that you ended up collaborating with Amit Datta, and you were in Aadmi Ki Aurat or Anya Kahaniyan. So, and since then you've also worked with him a number of films. So what have been your kind of learnings in working with Amit Datta and assisting him?
Amit is a very passionate filmmaker in that sense, and he is a driving force on the sets, on the shoot. So that was this one major lesson which I learned working with him. And also, he would never give a script in the sense how scripts are written. It was like in form of, like a short breakdown, and then in detail, like it was like a big chart. So the way he imagined the film, they were very interesting for me, actually.
Can you explain this chart? It sounds very interesting.
I think it's there in the industry also.
Okay.
Basically, there are different columns where he would like separate different aspects.
It's like a short breakdown, but very detailed. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, okay. Yes. So like properties, costumes, actors. So your dialogues are also in one column.
Right.
Okay. So you knew, okay, then you have to look for, okay, my dialogue is here in this shot, So that way he marked that. But Amit, so, and also there was this other lesson which I learned from Amit was that, Amit also works in a lot of constraints. It's not an ideal world because it's like very, very low budget films he's trying to create. So, if he couldn't get any, like some filmmakers are very adamant on, like I want this, and I want it this way only. And then if they don't get it, they end up, trying to spend even more money or more resources. And then, but Amit was like, he would find ways to deal with that also. And then I realized, this was also a creative way to handle things and situations.
You've also assisted Anoop Singh, and I interviewed him recently for the show as well. So again, from Anoop, what have your kind of learnings been? You were the casting director, right, on his last
second film? Yes. Like Anoop and Amit are like both like contrasting forces in that sense. Anoop is like more calm and more relaxed, and Anoop would discuss each and everything beforehand on shoot, and he would involve you also in the creative process, like me, and like Anoop actually would work on certain principles, you know, and then he would write the mise-en-scène and work with the mise-en-scène with you. So
by principles you mean?
It's like shooting principles, or like there's the script, and then, you know, there are ideas behind the script,
right?
Behind
of how
scene.
you shoot it.
Yeah, or like many ideas, you know. So yeah, so Anoop works in that sense. Yeah. Also, Anoop, you know, he gets a bigger team also, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Like, Amit has like
yeah.
a very small team.
Right.
He works in like very minimal resources, and Anoop also doesn't have like larger resources like Bollywood or Hollywood films, but still he manages like resources and means like in which he can also create.
So I'm just kind of, it's maybe not making sense, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm kind of bringing all of the different kind of influences before I get into your films. So the other big thing that you've been on sets for is as an actor.
Yeah.
So if you can talk about your acting experience and what that has kind of given you as a filmmaker now, of how you make a film.
No, as an actor, I've realized that you know, each director is different. And because in filmmaking, actually, you know, it's the director's baby. So director conceives, if he's a good director, then he conceives the whole mise-en-scène, the whole look, or like whatever he wants to create, you know, on the film. So then, you know, like my role as an actor is to understand the director first, actually, you know. Okay, what does he want? How is he looking at things? You know, how does he want to create certain things? So then it becomes very easy for me also, you know, like that's why, you know, like I like to spend some time with my directors, and then whenever like I'm cast, like I panic a lot, you know, like I'm like, okay, how will this look? I've read the script, but the script is just one thing, you know.
Right.
But how will it translate? So then I'm always writing the director and then calling them, and then they're like, oh, don't worry. And it has happened. Like on the German film, I was writing him emails. Okay, like you to tell me the background, the way we've been trained as actors. But he was very relaxed. He said, don't worry, you know, like my reference is this character. He's this fashion designer, and that's it. You come and then we'll have fun. And then his filmmaking was very different. He would come to my house. They had given me an apartment, and then we would discuss on politics and certain different things. And then the next day I would go on set and I see that he's put all that on paper in dialogues.
Oh, okay.
And then he said, yeah, you know, so this is this. And then sometimes I would point out, you know, but I'm playing a Sardar, you know, this is not right, this is not right. So he said, don't worry about all these things, they don't matter. And then in the end he said, okay, just remove this pagdi, you know. But I said, my hair is cut. So he said, don't worry, you know, my film is not about that. And then I realized, okay, his film is a different kind of film. He wanted, it's not representational, you know. He's working in a presentational mode, and he's working more with Brechtian ideas. So then it made everything easy for me, you know. So as an actor, that's the journey that I take.
So I wanted to start with talking about Lajwanti. It was a very fascinating idea. It's set in Rajasthan, and it's about this woman who wants to remain in her ghungat, but it's a kind of hypocrisy that she has when she has her own desires. So I saw Lajwanti, and then after that I saw Ashwathama, and I couldn't help but kind of compare your journey through those two films. The filmmaking is a lot more formal in Lajwanti. The characters are very much at a distance. We rarely see them actually speak the words. And I felt like they're more like symbols than characters. So can you talk about your choices with Lajwanti?
Lajwanti, because it was a folk tale and I was dealing, I wanted to deal with a folk aesthetic in that sense when I started Lajwanti. So my whole preparation was understanding the folk traditions in Rajasthan. So mainly musical traditions, painting traditions, oral traditions like storytelling itself. I was so fascinated by those folk traditions that I decided that, I'll also go with this aesthetic in the film. And then I followed the aesthetic. That's why it looks very formal also, the whole composition and the whole aesthetic. Yeah, because there are references
to actual kind of images.
To work actually, to folk traditions. So yeah.
And what were your learnings from making Lajwanti, like that you took then to your next feature film?
One was actually, to just jump into it, rather not to wait, because the process for Lajwanti wasn't so easy. I was talking to people to raise some money, and then there were a couple of people who had agreed also, but then they, as usual, like producers or like other people, they delay, and then they, you're not sure whether they want to come in or not. And then I decided to just go ahead. I just had very little money in the account. I wrote to people like emails so that I could get crowdfunding, and then I just jumped in and I made the film. And then and then I joined FTII. I was teaching there, and then I was saving money, and then I was working on it again. So
this is, you joined FTII as a teacher?
Yes. So and then I realized, that sometimes it's good not to wait and procrastinate, and not to wait like even for money, If you want to create something, just go for it, just jump into it, and things will happen. Like it's it all comes from you actually, like if you lead, things will also lead in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah.
And in terms of your screenwriting, what is that kind of process of evolution for you? Like, how do you go about an idea and writing it down and processing it? And does it keep changing until you get to shoot? And how does that process work for you?
Like my script writing is very basic. I just, it's not so elaborative. What I do is like I have a clear idea of the structure. So I just write the structure down with basic actions and dialogues. That's it. And then, then I ideate on how do I translate this into film. So then I work on certain ideas, on like principles, like what I've learned with Anup.
So can you, come back to this bit? I want you to give me an example of this principle. I want to understand what kind of specifically.
Like for example, I'll talk about Lajwanti. So Lajwanti was like a 8-page script.
Oh, okay.
Only an 8-page meaning both Hindi and English.
Okay.
Because it's inspired from a folk tale. So I just took the folk tale, I wrote as it is in final draft, and then put the Hindi dialogues into it. That's it. And then, I realized, okay, I wanted to work with the folk aesthetic. So what are the principles from the folk which I can take upon? So for example, Lajwanti for me was like, I was very fascinated by the Ashtanayika in the Natya Shastra. So then I thought, okay, I'll bring this whole idea of the Ashtanayika also, because for me also she is like a Nayika, because I'm also...
Ashtanayika is what? Sorry,
there are this 8 kind of heroines.
Okay, I know the rasas are there.
Yes.
So Ashtanayika is which one?
There are, so then, the text describes there are 8 kinds of Nayikas.
Okay.
So like Vipralabh, Khandita, similarly, like there are 8. I can't just remember suddenly.
Yeah, but that's fine. But
yeah.
So Ashtanayika means what?
There are 8 kinds of heroines.
Okay.
So in different
that's
texts,
what it means. Okay.
So for example, Virahita is like someone who is like longing.
Okay.
And she is in Viraha,
Okay.
Khandita means मतलब टूट चुकी है ना, मतलब.
Right. Okay.
So similarly, yeah. So someone is in love, like, and someone is angry at her lover. So this whole idea of 8 kinds of heroines was there, and so I wanted to bring that into my film also. So I was referring to paintings, etc., etc. So that is one thing. And then also when I read the script, actually the script I felt was more on the more on the socialist format of a heroine, actually, rather than calling her a heroine, a woman actually, who is into her whale, but she wants to, but she has a desire also, So she wants, so her journey from the whale and her conditioning to, like leaving everything and following her desire, the path of the desire. So that's the journey. So, and then I realized, okay, that's there in the story, but I should move beyond it. So then how can I bring other traditions also, So then, this whole tradition of gopis, like longing for Krishna. So it's there in our texts,
right?
So then I took that reference also. So then the man actually became a reference for Krishna, like, and then I took it to the Sufi tradition. The man becomes that actually. So then, this whole idea of following a dream then became that then, the passion. So that's how, you work on an idea and then you ideate and then you make principles and then you try to bring that into the film.
Okay. This is a very interesting idea, the Krishna.
Yeah.
So just moving to Ashwathama, then the film that was at Mami, I actually mentioned to you earlier, I thought it was a very moving film and I was very surprised. I got very emotional. And so it's kind of a shift in your storytelling in some sense. And you've spoken a lot about Ashwathama as this character from the Mahabharata as basically a unsympathetic protagonist in some sense. And I wanted to talk about the choice of the protagonist. And in Lajwanti, like I said, it's slightly more elliptical and we're kind of at a distance from our characters. But in Ashwathama, it's kind of a little bit more traditional approach. This character is an underdog and he's a child who loses his mother. So can you talk about that process of how you chose this kind of protagonist to tell your story?
First, actually, I didn't want to repeat myself. Like from one film to the other, and then it becomes very predictable as an artist also. And also, I consider the whole process as a sadhana, so like, like how do you then try to experiment with different forms or like different stories, or like the whole process of filmmaking itself, so how do you deal with it in different ways, which excite you also, as a filmmaker. So, so then, of course, one of the whole source of the storytelling for filmmakers have been going to their childhood and, like taking inspiration from there. And there was a tradition already, there is a tradition of films where filmmakers have gone to their childhood and they have made films on that. So I also wanted to do that. So I just decided then to go for it, and then it all became about memory and then like how certain things have shaped you. So when I was growing up, religion was of course a big thing for me because I studied in this hostel I told you. So it was a very tyrannical setup there. So it's like like when you are tied up and the whole very brutal actually childhood, but not only me but other children have faced like even worse than that. Like we were beaten like badly, brutally, I remember there was a child whose hand got fractured. So what is the savior then? The savior is God. You always in such situations you go for God. I went for that. And then I remember I used to like fast every day, like without even drinking a single drop of water. Not for a day, but more than 24 hours, like.
Wow.
So, then that, thing I wanted to explore from my own childhood also, and then from my childhood it went to society, how society deals with this, and then how do I look at how society is dealing with this. So then, I tried to weave everything into the story, and then,
So there's a strong autobiographical aspect to a lot of this, and the narrative is set in Chambal, which you mentioned that's where you're from, and the idea of Chambal is associated with one of dacoity, and you've kind of reset the picture. I mean, it's there, it comes in at the end, but can you talk about that, about this idea of this place which has such a strong connection in the larger imagination?
Yeah, in the larger imagination, I think it's a distorted picture.
Because you just see that landscape and those things are like automatic, the associations.
So basically, in our area, it's like very common. Whenever there is a drought, or whenever there is something like that, you can see that dacoity increases. And dacoity is in different ways, like it's not only coming to a village and looting. Sometimes, like the easiest way is to kidnap a child and then do extortion. So that is also one of the ways. And it's a valid fear. It still exists. So I remember in Chambal, there's a big thing that everyone wants to have a gun. That's why, and politicians lose elections if they can't get licenses for people, So I remember I've seen that since my childhood, and in my whole family, everyone has guns. And I used to see my father, like sleeping with the gun every day. And then there have been some certain instances there when there has been sometimes a rumor or sometimes a threat of dacoits coming, and then the whole villagers coming and then resisting it. So it's not like that the dacoits are powerful.
Right.
Like in my village, they have never managed to even enter the village.
Okay.
So it's like that. So it's people also are powerful. They also can resist.
Right.
But in the larger imagination, it's like people are crushed.
Right.
It's like they are the evil, or it's like both ways. So, and also, then they become myths actually. So because I was dealing with myths, then I said, okay, let me deal with this also as a myth. That's why you see this, the sister telling a story about a dacoit.
Dacoit, right.
Yeah, as a myth, So then I have also dealt it in that way.
And you've kind of reframed the conversation actually about what that Chambal is like. We see it from the point of view of this child, which is quite unique, I thought, as a perspective.
Of course, I wanted to do that because like you see films, olden films, and then a certain film like Pan Singh Tomar, which is talked about.
Right.
But then I felt that was also not true Chambal. It was so Chambal in itself it's like a landscape. It's like a small world in itself.
Right.
And then, how do people deal with certain, like fears and their anxieties and their ambitions and their aspirations. And also, of course, like India, it's also a patriarchal society. And then, so that's also,
So, there's an amazing amount of detailing in the film, and there's like the tractor that needs a push to start. There's the electricity comes back on in a shot of your eating, and there's a teacher teaching 3 classes simultaneously. So, this question of authenticity as a filmmaker, how do you deal with that? I mean, you're making a film at the end of the day, of course, but is that something that you struggle with? Of how you portray a place, people?
No, I don't think in that term as a filmmaker. But, as a filmmaker, my concern is also, it's also very Janpadiya. Janpadiya means, it's a small like area which is like common culture and tradition, rituals, language, so they are bound by this common culture. So my focus is that actually. So then how do you bring out all those aspects? Because my filmmaking is also, I'm not only telling a story actually,
Right.
What some filmmakers do, and you read all the script labs and script workshops, is like they want to focus on the story, and then like how can the story be interesting? I think that's a very Hollywood model. But my concerns are larger than that. The story is always there, and there's not one story, but there are many stories. For example, a tractor being, it's not starting and then you push it. It's also a story in itself.
Right.
And so there are multiple stories, but they come from, like, my concern is the Janpadiya, like I'm trying to deal with the Janpadiya idea. So when you deal with the Janpadiya idea, I think, this detailing, it becomes natural then to it, because you are looking for more, like, many aspects in the Janpadiya, to understand that culture and to show it on the film also,
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. We're talking to Pushpendra Singh, and we're going to continue talking about folk tales and folk stories.
Hello there, my name is Naveen Narona, and as a gay person in India, I get asked a lot of stupid questions.
Beta, is it LGBT or eligibility?
How do two men procreate?
Bro, is Grindr better than Tinder or what?
We answer all these questions and much more on my podcast, Keeping It Queer, where I talk to individuals from the LGBT community in India and learn about their personal stories. Catch all the episodes on the IVM podcast app or any other podcasting app you like. Till then, keep it queer.
We are back. We are talking to Pushpendra Singh, and I wanted to talk about folk stories. So both your films, they've been adapted from folk tales that have been written by Vijay and Datta. And so can you talk about the structure of folk stories? Or I know you're critical of the 3-act structure and basically that idea, that story idea. So can you speak about what are the alternatives and why we don't see enough of the alternatives?
I like this definition of art, that all art aspires to the condition of music. So if all art aspires to the condition of music, then what is this condition of music? So the condition of music is not so rational. The condition of music is no logical. The condition of music is experiential. And, music attracts everyone else. So, why can't even like filmmaking follow that? Because I also agree to this this whole idea of filmmaking as a temporal medium rather than calling it as a visual or an oral medium, Because music is also a temporal medium. And, we, for example, if we go to a classical concert, so classical concert, like when a classical singer sings, the duration can never be like the same. Because within the bandish, a classical singer can go on and improvise and then he can come back. So sometimes the duration would be different and then the other time the duration would be different. Because this whole idea, like it's temporal. So why can't like filmmaking also follow that process? So then to break from this whole idea of a 3-act structure, so then there are so many possibilities which open for a filmmaker and for a film. And I think which can make it more interesting. And if we train our audiences also like that, then I think cinema can become like more enriched, and even in India. And I don't think only like very rare filmmakers do that, and they go into that terrain. And then I think more and more can even venture out into that terrain, and then you'll see how like from different pockets of India, like filmmakers emerging, because then it'll be more interesting, like their stories.
Their stories, yeah. But that's already started to happen. Fair amount now.
Yeah.
I think. So, how do you prepare for a film? Do you storyboard in terms of you collect all of these images And then what is that process like from translating from page to...
No, I once I write the script, I just forget it.
Okay.
I completely forget it. Like Ashwathama, I wrote it. It was just one draft, and in the second draft I just made some corrections so that it's helpful for my crew, etc. Like locations, understanding this, that, etc. And then to remove some scenes. That's it. And then it was written in English because everyone can understand it. But if you look at my characters, people, usually I cast non-professionals. Right. They don't even understand English, so I don't even give them the script. So then, because I have this structure in my mind, so a lot of my time goes into ideating. And that's why, this location Reiki becomes very important for me. Like I spend on Lajwanti, I traveled across Rajasthan to find the locations which I wanted, and somehow I had Jaisalmer in my mind, but I went there the last. That also 2 days before the shoot. I had shortlisted another location, but there was a Manganiyar singer, he invited me there, and when I went there, he showed me the locations. I was like, no, this is the place. And then I changed everything. I said, no, we're not shooting there, we'll shoot here. And only I had seen it, and then I invited Ravi, my cinematographer also, and then he saw, and then that's... And in the Chambal, of course, most of that came from my memory, but the whole, the valley, we had done a Reiki on the Dholpur side, Rajasthan side, but then before the shoot, I liked this location more. Because I had this last shot in my mind, so then I went with that. So Reiki becomes very important for me because the way I visualize, the way I see, and also I reference a lot from paintings. So it's like when I ideate, so that like paintings, listening to music, and reading. Sometimes reading also helps. It gives you an idea that I can include this. And then on the sets, like being open to things around, that also helps me. And I react a lot to, on the surroundings on the set. The way light falls, the way the light is changing. Or sometimes, like the way my actors outside the set, like when the shoot is not going there, I keep observing them. And then suddenly I feel, oh, this is very interesting, like I can include this. And then I include that in the film.
So you worked with a cast of non-actors, and what was your process like in preparing them for the film? And also I think you made certain considerations for your cast during the shooting as well. So can you talk about that?
Preparation, I think with non-professionals, it's a wrong idea. Yeah. On Lajwanti, I did not even have time for preparation. We just jumped in, and then we finalized this non-professionals who were not actors, but who were not also common folk, but they were performing artists, like dancers especially and singers in Jaisalmer, because it's a cultural tourist spot, so they come there. So and then usually they were busy in the evening, so during the day I said you can commit to the film. And then because they are non-professionals, they don't come from the film background, you have to work according to them. And that also becomes a very interesting process for me, especially, and that in Ashwathama also. So then not only scheduling according to their schedule, but also the way they react to each other, the way they react to the location, the way they react to this whole the paraphernalia of shooting itself. So you have to be open, and you to be aware, and so you to include everything around them.
I wanted to talk about the shooting of the film, and you shot the whole film in black and white, which is very apt for the story because it kind of really gives it that timeless quality. So how did you work with Ravi or DOP to create it, and what were the kind of ways you tools you used in some sense?
Yeah, the like you called, to bring the timeless quality. I had this idea that I wanted this once upon a time feeling. So for that, with digital, it becomes really difficult to get that. I think only it's like through black and white. That's the best way. Of course, there are these filters and these methods, but I don't like them. You know, like on digital, you just can see it.
So what did you shoot the film? Is it on film?
No, it's digital. It's
right?
digital. That's why we were thinking of film, but then in India all the labs have shut down. There's only one lab, and the report was not nice. So then we decided, okay, we'll go with digital, but black and white. Because through black and white, at least we can achieve that quality. So yeah, I gave Ravi some references like to watch films, and then Ravi also did his homework, and then he was also like sending me stills, photographs. And then on the Reiki, when we were doing Reiki, we would click pictures and then we would work. Ravi would like grade it and then show me like, how do you want it, like what is the closest thing, and then I would say yeah, let's get more contrast, or let's get this quality. So then it became easy, like during the shoot he was also very clear what he wanted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've recently become a bit obsessed with sound in films, and you do this all the time in the film where the sound comes first and then you see the image, and it builds the tension in the scene. So what was your approach to sound when you went in? Was this a clear idea you had of going in that this was how you're going to approach it?
I think that's there on my first film also.
Yeah, I think it's then.
Yeah, I think sound is one tool which connects you inwards, I feel. Because eyes actually they go outwards. Sound is one, this medium which goes inwards. So I feel, it's a very powerful tool for filmmakers. And like the way I said, like music.
Right.
All arts aspire to the condition of music. So music also, because there's no image, you listen to music, and that's how you connect with music.
I think it's
deeply.
also similar to like reading versus watching, right? It's like there's an imagination that comes in.
Yeah. So sound, I think, is a very powerful medium in that sense. And you can lead through sound to even a wider imagination, So that's why I give big importance to sound.
So just to change tracks a little bit, can you talk about a moment of some kind of failure in filmmaking or acting or any kind of sphere and how you dealt with it?
Again, I don't see it as failure and success, because again it's this model, which I feel it's like successful, failure, and that's why parents, don't want their kids.
Let me change the question.
Yeah.
How do you measure then that for yourself? Like whether you've made a film and like we know what the whole situation is with independent film, with audiences, all of that stuff. So how do you then, what is the barometer for you, for your film and for what you're doing?
I see it as a journey and as a tough journey, yes, because we are still like hoping that audiences will evolve and they'll find your work and your work would be seen. I think I'll be very honest about that, and I think all filmmakers, all storytellers want that, their stories reach to people.
Right.
So it's a tough journey. It's not an easy journey. So it's a challenge. Yes.
But then do you have your own kind of measure? Like how do you evaluate that? Like we spoke about success and failure. How do you evaluate then that?
No, I don't try to think much about it, because then then I'll try to like, I have to swim more, like I have to reach there.
Right.
Then this whole enjoyment, the whole process would just disappear. I want to like just create and then move on. So my failure would be if I can't create, like if I'm unable to create, and I get sleepless nights thinking about that only. Okay, what if next? Oh, what? Like, how would I do this? And I'm full of ideas, and I want to do this also, do that also, and how will I do it? So, and I want to keep myself motivated for that. And you have ups and downs. So you have, you have downs, and then you think, oh no, like, I think I can't see it much more. Because one day it will stop. So yeah, that's the fear.
So the downs, then the anxiety is related to...
It's related to, it's like I won't be able to create. Suddenly I'll be tied up with this pressure of that I have to run like home, I have to, like sustain myself. And so then, if you have to do that, then, like you have to slog out.
Right.
To earn actually, and then this whole creative process goes for a toss because then you don't want to cheat with that, you want to give best to that also.
Right.
For example, I started teaching at FTII. I was hoping I'll manage this and I'll manage that also. And then when I went there, because I was realized, I can't cheat there. I was a student and we went with expectations and they were never fulfilled. So I said, I can't do that. If I have gone there, then I have to give my 100%.
Right.
And then there are challenges within the institution, and that just sucks all your energy. And then you can't get out of that. And I could not get out. And then suddenly I had to, leave the place to create.
So now you're no longer at FTI?
No, now, no. Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of leads into my next question, which is how does life, like all the other life stuff, and filmmaking coexist for you in your life? What is that kind of relationship for you?
I think it's challenging because like when you filmmaking, it's like it takes all your attention and energy. Because you want to create something, you're always thinking about that. So then your family life suffers, and that's the complaint which I get from my family, my friends, and then. And suddenly, when I'm into it, suddenly you become like a recluse, and your relationships suffer, because of that. So, yeah, that's.
So you've not found a balance of anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about distribution a little bit.
Yes.
In terms of for Lajwanti, you went the crowdfunding route, and so what were your learnings from that process, from that whole crowdfunding exercise? If, say, somebody were to undertake it today, I don't know what the scene is right now with crowdfunding, but
yeah, crowdfunding, I think for your first film or like first time is okay, but then it doesn't work regularly. Because even on Lajwanti, I realized I went for crowdfunding. The crowdfunding picked up, but as soon as this news was announced that Lajwanti is in Berlin, suddenly the whole crowdfunding dropped.
Oh.
Because I think, suddenly people felt, oh, he's already privileged.
Right.
And some even wrote to me in emails, when I would write to them seeking funds. But you're already at Berlin, like.
Right, you've made it. You don't need the money.
So then this whole thing, and then I could not achieve my target also because of that. So that happens, and also it's a rigorous task to do crowdfunding.
Right, it's
you
quite
have to
time
be at
consuming.
it.
Yeah,
you can't just let it and then funds will come. You have to have like crowdfunding managers, and they have to be at it, and it has to be like in. Like on social media all the time. So to create a buzz around it, so people are at it and then they're reacting to it, responding to it. So then it takes your energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you've kind of managed to find a bunch of grants for your most recent work. Can you tell us something about that whole process that might help other filmmakers? Yeah,
I would encourage everyone to actually look and search for grants and apply for grants, because grants make a lot of your work easy in that sense, because then you don't have to compromise. on your quality to fulfill expectations of producers or like XYZ. Because grants sometimes have their own objectives also, so you have to understand those objectives and maybe articulate it like that, but not necessarily that you have to reflect that in your work also. But yes, I think the whole purpose of grants is to support artists and filmmakers who are passionate about their art of filmmaking. So yeah, that's one route which I would advise everyone to go for. Yes.
You made fiction films so far, and now you're kind of you've shifted gears, you're making a documentary. So what drives that choice of the form, and is that something that you consider?
I think it's a creative process. So I've not shifted to documentary, just one documentary.
Okay.
Yes, because
No, I'm not saying you shifted, but I'm saying it's like it is a totally kind of different approach to the medium.
Yeah.
So
again, but it's a musical documentary.
Okay.
So I just like music, especially folk music, and Manganias. This family that helped me on my first film. So I go there regularly, like in the desert, like twice a year I go there.
Okay.
So then I thought, okay, let us start working on this. And I take Ravi with me. I invite him. So then we started experimenting, and then we started experimenting with the form itself, and then try to what if we try to make it a musical documentary which is on music, and then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But then again, I am not following a pattern, or that is how documentary should be.
Right.
Maybe it goes from a musical to it goes into an actuality, and then it leaves that. It becomes like the nature of music itself. So it's a very creative and a very enjoyable process for me, because it's been now more than 4 years and I'm still working on it.
Okay. So you go and you work on it twice a year, or you've been going?
Yeah, go shoot, and come, and then there's an editor, so I work with her, and then I have more ideas, and then the next time I go and I said, okay, let's try these ideas. Let's try to explore this aspect of, there's a protagonist, and it's a child, with him, whether how does it work then. So yeah, it's a very creative process. Yeah.
Okay, sounds very interesting process.
Yes.
So you taught acting, and what have you kind of learned from that process of teaching?
Yeah, I think it's a very good and an important question. Yes. I think one, I have realized that no two individuals are same, and everyone is different, and then not necessarily one process would work for everyone. So the mistakes which I think acting training schools do, even FTII is doing it, they have to be more open to different techniques, and let expose the actors towards it. And then maybe something would work for someone, some other thing would work for others. So this whole idea of working towards a certain method of realistic acting, which comes from this whole psychological school of Stanislavski, maybe doesn't work. And that I've learned more than teaching actors. I've learned this from working with non-professionals on both my films.
Right.
Because ultimately film, it's juxtaposition of images, also juxtaposition of ideas. So also juxtaposition of, it could be an emotion with something else. So how how you weigh that, and how do you work around that, it can be interesting. So all this acting schools, how they cater, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think everyone's approach is very, very different and individual.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a very random question, which is totally counterintuitive to what you just said. But I like collecting acting exercises for some reason. So are there any favorite ones you have for actors?
Of course, one is I believe concentration is very important for actors. So I do some concentration exercises sometimes, when I do workshops with non-professionals also, and then I make the whole concentration exercise into a playful exercise, and then how they get into it, and then they start role playing, and then
can you be specific if you can do it in a short?
It's not a very simple exercise, for example, this number game that you call a number and then I call the other number and then you call the third number. That's it. So we count 1, 2, 3.
Right.
And then you replace one with some sound and an action.
Okay.
And then just follow that. And then from sound and an action you can lead it to something else, maybe some unit of action. So it becomes very interesting. Suddenly you are focused and your attention is
you
there.
have to pay attention to what's happening.
And simultaneously you are not thinking about this 5 Ws or this whole idea of method. You are there in the moment. You are as you are. So that becomes very interesting.
Okay, that's the good exercise. Thank you for that. Yeah. So do you have any advice for directors or actors?
My advice would be to travel, meet people, and explore lives. I think because now what is happening is with social media and media and especially people, coming to Bombay and just being stuck in Bombay. We are actually tying ourselves into even smaller and smaller and smaller closed worlds.
Right.
And as artists, the world is outside. So I think I would encourage everyone to travel and move out and meet people and spend your time there. And it's not only stories are there, but also ideas and lives and certain traditions, they are there. So it'll help a lot.
Yeah. So can you tell us about your upcoming projects?
Of course, one is this documentary which I spoke about, which I'm working on, and then the next is again I've been inspired from this again a folk tale by Vijay Dandita, but it's set in Kashmir among this tribe, Bakarwal tribe, which is in the news because a small girl was raped very recently, and a policeman was indicted, and then there was this whole scene of politicians and people actually supporting the policeman instead of the whole tribe. So it's set in the same tribe, the whole story, and again the whole idea is to explore the folk tradition and also the challenges which they face in the current times. But it's told through the story of a woman again.
Okay. And do you have any idea when that's going to be done, or you're still in the process?
I've gone there once, but it's very interesting because they are a nomadic tribe. So they in the winters they come down, and then in the summers they go up in the valley.
Okay.
So I had gone when they had come down in the winters. Now I want to make a journey with them in the summers. So in April I'll be there.
Yeah, I went to Kashmir and I kept thinking there's so many stories here that are not about terrorism. So
that's all. It's like one part of it.
Right, exactly. That's
just, for example, this tribe is there,
and that's all those stories that we haven't heard, right? So many.
So I want to make a journey with them. And then I'll take a call.
Okay.
Because I've written the script, and then maybe if I have to work around, maybe one draft more, or not necessarily, and then I'll take a call.
Okay. So we usually wrap up with a film recommendation. So I'll give my film recommendation and then you can go.
Yeah.
So the film I'm recommending is Zama. It's by Lucretia Martel. I saw it at the Mami Film Club screening.
Yes.
And it's an anti-hero story. I call it like a Lucretia Martel version of Apocalypse Now. And I love how she's worked with sound. I mean, it's really amazing. She does this thing with sound, which is, I can't even describe it. So please do check it out. Pushpendra, your recommendation?
I would recommend everyone to watch this film, Nansuk by Amit Datta. I think every Indian should watch it. You know, the way he brings this poetry of miniature paintings of Nansuk on screen, and the way, you know, like he presents it.
I saw it. It was amazing.
Yeah, and he's, you know, the way he connects the past into the present, you know, the whole the runes and the paintings, and the way he plays with the whole history of that, you know. So it's very interesting.
Okay, yeah, it's another good film recommendation. Okay, thank you so much, Pushpendra, for this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all for listening. If you have any comments, feedbacks or questions, we would love to hear from you. So tweet me at Neha R. Thak, or you can reach out to us on IVM Podcast. We are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for listening.
As you can see, we have a podcast listener in his natural habitat. Millions of years of evolution have led him to this point. He's on his way to work, and listening to podcasts makes his miserable day better. He will now head to work and use all his knowledge to communicate with other colleagues and possibly future mates. You can find more of his species on ivmpodcasts.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out all the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.